Welcome to Gateway Open Office Hours, episode 45. I'm your host, Carter Laren. I'm missing my co-host, Ben Larson, who has a good excuse this time. I'm here with JP Martin and Darwin Hunt from GrowX. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us, Carter.
Thanks for coming and helping me out at the last minute. A little bit of a clusterfuck, but we don't have to go into that too much. Ben hates when I talk about how much things are a clusterfuck behind the scenes.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think it's probably unprofessional.
I think so.
Yeah, thanks, PL. I don't know, you can follow us on Twitter. You can get to Office Hours every 10 a.m. on Facebook, where YouTube. Download us on iTunes or Google Play or all that kind of fun stuff. You can use the hashtag GatewayOH to reach out to us, ask us questions, or what have you. Michael, you said I get to skip the news today, right? All right, so there's no news other than we're missing Ben because he is creating a mini Ben, or has created a mini Ben.
The world doesn't know
I think his wife might have helped
him.
him out a little bit.
Do we have a name?
Yeah, Alistair Larson.
It's a very
Yes.
powerful name.
Yes, I expect him to be funding you soon.
Great.
So-
Great.
He got money
Yes.
when he came out of the womb.
Yes. So,
The valuation at that point might be a little higher, but
I think he'll be able to afford it. It's a very prestigious name. So, yeah, congratulations to Ben and Rush. So, let's talk about, before we get into, I want to talk about your founder journey because, A, it's been rocky, and B, it's looking pretty good right now. So, it's a nice mix of all the problems and successes you can have as a founder early on. But before I do, can you just give a really quick overview of what the hell GrowX is and what it does so people have context, and then we'll kind of get into the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So GrowX builds AI-powered aeroponic systems. And for those that aren't familiar with aeroponics, it's a way to grow plants in air without soil or hydroponic media, which makes it cheaper, cleaner, and less labor-intensive than any other farming method. With the added benefit that it increases growth rates by 200 to 300% versus soil and about 50% faster than hydroponics, while reducing water and nutrient consumption by about 95% versus traditional outdoor soil farming and by about 40% versus hydroponics.
So in case any founders are watching, you need to have pitched enough that you can rattle that off very nicely. Like, I'm not picking on you. Clearly prepared. You've said that a million times.
Yeah.
Right, you spent the last 6 months picking on me so that we could get to this point.
Yes. No, it's great. It's like the perfect description of what you do.
It takes 6 months to get to one sentence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, actually, that's about right. But just to clarify, also, aeroponics isn't like a new thing. Correct me where I'm wrong. Aeroponics isn't a new thing. It's been around for a while, but the problem is it's really, really labor intensive, and it's very difficult. It's like the plants are very, very sensitive to when they're exposed without soil. They're very, very sensitive. And so making aeroponics actually work is just prohibitively labor intensive until basically you guys came along and applied kind of automation and machine learning to kind of control the environment, so it's more push button aeroponics than sit there watching it constantly.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I mean, full disclosure, obviously they went through Gateway, so we have a vested interest in making them look good, but that's my understanding of the technology. Right?
Correct. So aeroponics has really been around for about 80 years in an academic setting. That's been used largely for root growth studies. But if we look back over history, I mean, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were technically aeroponic gardens, and orchids are a natural aeroponic plant.
Oh. Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't thought of it. Okay, cool. All right, so now let's back up. I know you guys have been working on some form of GrowX for quite some time. Tell us how this began, why the hell you partnered with Darwin is beyond me. So
Always the asshole, Carter.
yeah, tell us that. Yes, he is. Oh, you're, never mind. No, I would like to, I think, let's hear your origin story, and then we'll get into some of the challenges that you had along the way.
Sure. So this started off as a passion project about 4 years ago while I was living in LA and working for Elon Musk at SpaceX. I was a software engineer at the time, and at the time I was dating someone that was heavily self-medicating with cannabis for bipolar depression. And I was supporting her at the time and spending quite a bit of money on medicine. And it got to the point where I was like, maybe we should just start growing it. At the time, it was legal in California if you had a rec to grow a small number of plants. And so we planted a garden. at our house, and I kind of fell in love with the process. And around 4 years ago was also the time that the California drought was becoming highly sensationalized, and there was this, this water crisis. And as I kind of progressed in my own interest and passion, both in agriculture and in growing cannabis, I stumbled across aeroponics. I was like, wow, like this technology exists. It's been around for a long time. NASA did a bunch of studies with this technology in the 90s and proved all these things. But despite the obvious benefits, like there's really no one using this today. I mean, I think you have small projects probably in Japan and Singapore. There's a company in New Jersey, Aero Farms, that recently got funded to build a big lettuce farm with this technology, but there's nobody really selling a turnkey platform that is easy to use. So as you mentioned, aeroponics is inherently challenging for a number of reasons, and we basically set out to build a system that solves all of those problems. Now, 4 years ago, that was not the plan.
Okay.
4 years ago, we had started with aeroponics, and actually fast forward 2 years later, after I had kind of spent 2 years messing around, growing, trying different things at home, finally was ready to kind of make the leap. At the time, the product was a three-dimensional LED lighting fixture that we were going to put into this kind of automated, like fully enclosed commercial grow box. And when I left and stopped working full-time, I knew what I needed, and what I knew as a software engineer. I knew that I really needed someone that came from a strong business and finance background that could help with all things related to business development, sales, finance, fundraising, et cetera. And then I didn't know hardware. And so 3 weeks after I stopped working full time, some buddies from SpaceX and I decided to compete at the AT&T Developer Summit Hackathon at the Consumer Electronics Showcase in Las Vegas.
Okay.
We ended up winning $5,000 and free tickets to CES. So the first day of the conference, we decided to sneak into press conferences, and I happened to sneak into the Epson press conference where Darwin happened to be consulting for a technology company, and we got to chatting, and he had mentioned kind of what he did. He was doing some angel investing, some consulting, and then kind of had that business checkboxes. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then he also mentioned that his family has a family farm in Wisconsin. He's always been interested in ag, and so we set up a meeting for the next week. The next day, I was at a booth.
I might hop in
here.
here.
Please.
The level of excitement and exuberance coming from the three SpaceX engineers after they won $5,000 was like they had just hit the jackpot. The level of confidence with $5,000 in Vegas, which sounds like a lot of money, but in Vegas it's really kind of it's a hand of blackjack if you're sitting at the right table. They were walking around like they owned the strip, so it was very endearing, and it was actually really fun to see.
Awesome. So, but this, you had been working on this for like 2 years, not really on this exact thing, but
correct
something here for a couple years. So, had you even formed a company at this point?
No.
Okay, so you were just like side project thing I'm working on.
Yep.
I'm going to quit SpaceX and kind of work on this full time, but
Yep.
I know I need a founder, a co-founder, and a team. Got
Exactly.
it. And then you're like, I'm a baller. I have $5,000 in Vegas.
Yeah,
Great. So that impressed you a lot.
I was very impressed.
Yes.
we called Steve Wynn right after.
Right
that.
away. Yeah.
That was all the money I had to
There's
make
an
at the
engineer
time,
downstairs
so-
with $5K.
Get down there.
Awesome. Okay.
So the next day, I was at another booth where I was writing this little like one-wheeled last mile transportation device, and I had asked the gentleman next to me to hold my stuff. And I come back and we got to chatting. It turns out that gentleman happened to be the director of architecture development at Fairchild Semiconductor. You may know that small company.
I've heard of them.
So I kind of mentioned what I was doing. He's like, oh, I just finished an LED project. I was like, oh, well, here you go. Within 24 hours, I like checked the business box, I checked the hardware box. Like the world is just kind of coming together. And so we all met in Northern California about a month later and kind of chatted and decided that we were going to do this thing. About 2 months later, we incorporated the company. That was April of 2015. And filed our first patent the next day, built our first prototype that month, and then went out and tried to fundraise very exuberantly with that same level of enthusiasm as first-time founders.
And confidence.
With
A lot of confidence.
a product with no validated results. And we were trying to raise $2 million, I think, on a safe with a $10 million. No,
I was going to ask you your terms.
I think it was
so-
uncapped. Was it uncapped or was it $20 million the first one?
No, it was 20.
It was 2 and 20 with it basically a deck and no idea what
No, you know what's funny about that to me is I don't think I've revealed this publicly. Like the first time I went out to fundraise, I did the exact same thing. I like 2 on 20, and I remember
Sounds good.
it sounds great,
10%
right?
of the company, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. And I remember meeting. I won't reveal who it was, but he turned out. I didn't realize he was like a well-known VC, and he turned out to be really nice. He was like, he kind of explained to me that I was an idiot really nicely. They didn't invest, and they shouldn't have. But he explained to me that I was an idiot. But then for like the next couple years, actually, he would kind of talk to me via email and like give me advice and whatever. But I do wish he had explained a little bit more forcefully how much of an idiot I was. But yeah, so okay, so 2 on 20.
2 on 20.
Standard mistake, I guess.
Needless to say, that didn't go very well. We
Right.
spent the next 6 months.
We got 25.
We got 25. We did.
Oh, nice.
25K.
Someone was this a relative?
So this was a gentleman.
Was it in Vegas?
It wasn't in Vegas. It was a gentleman who's been one of our biggest supporters, guy by the name of Cliff Maraschino. I don't know if it was okay to say it on this, but yeah,
Well,
Cliff has been a great.
It's too late.
It's too late. Cliff, if you're out there watching, we
Thank
appreciate
you, Cliff.
everything.
You're
So
amazing.
he believed in you.
He believes in us.
He had
And
not
still
met
does.
JP. He had seen the deck, and we had beers at a restaurant in LA called Worst Kucha, and he said, you know what, I believe that you're going to find a way to make this work. And he had never even met JP, who was actually the brains behind the operation. It was just me, so he must have really.
You're an awesome salesperson.
It must have been, yeah. Well, relative to 2 million, I guess I fell a little bit below the mark, but at least I got us enough so that we could get some.
Yeah,
patents
but
fine.
you got some
Yeah.
money on pretty good terms.
Which we've adjusted those terms for Cliff. And
Yes, I
of course,
assume you have.
yes.
Yeah.
But so we got 25.
Yeah. And so we spent kind of the next 6 months.
Wait, were you guys all in Northern California at this point? Had you moved, or what was going on?
Darwin was still in Newport Beach. I was living in my mom's house in Marin. And
So you'd moved back.
I had moved back, yeah.
Right after CES, yeah.
Yeah, so I stopped working full time in Manhattan Beach mid-December of 2014, moved home to Northern California the January 20th of 2015.
Okay.
And then our third co-founder lives in San Jose.
Okay. All right.
So we spent the next 6 months trying to fundraise on various permutations of ridiculous valuations and note structures, and tried to lead our own price round at the end of the summer after attending a very interesting family office conference on Martha's Vineyard at the beginning of August of 2015,
Nice.
where we're like, two young cowboys from Silicon Valley
Right.
trying to raise money for a cannabis startup at a family office course on Martha's Vineyard. You can imagine how that
Yes.
was received.
Very buttoned up.
Yes, and setting your own terms.
Setting your own terms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So that went well, and then
yeah. So at that point, we had made some connections. People were making referrals for us. We got introduced to a venture fund, who I'm not going to name at this time.
really, I want to, but I won't either because I know where the story's going. But it's okay.
Karma's karma.
Yes. Okay.
So,
Fair.
We met them in about October of 2015. Met with them over the next course of the couple months. Ended up getting a signed term sheet from them. At not very favorable terms, but that was just kind of the deal that they put together in about February of 2016, February of last year. That was for, what were we raising? It was $2 million on 5, I believe.
5 pre.
Five pre.
And part of the deal structure was they got 10% common as part of, before the 5.
A kicker
Yeah,
beforehand.
just as a kicker for services, which were
You gotta love those venture firms that offer services.
very
also.
loosely defined services.
Yes.
Yep.
Very nice.
Not on paper services.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, given that we had been at this for almost a year, we're like, okay, we have a term sheet. Like, we finally got this. Let's go raise some money. We had actually rounded up 1.2 million in commitments from a few angels and another venture firm based out of San Diego.
Not to interrupt, but at
Yeah.
this point, what's the product at this point? Because you're so far, I think people know that you're building an LED thing.
Correct.
What's
The
going on at
product
this point?
at this, so we had this cylindrical LED light that was designed for basically vertical
Maybe even start one back at what was the original product.
before
Yeah.
the light.
Yeah, just I mean,
don't
if the
even
purpose of
remember.
this is to
Yeah, sure. What was
to
the
go
original
through
product?
the vertical light and then the fully integrated product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so the light, I had come across this technique in my kind of like online searchings of called a vertical screen of green, which is basically when you use side lighting to light the whole plant. So as opposed to getting flowers just at the top or the canopy and not utilizing the rest of the stalk, you sidelight the plant and actually get buds all the way up and down and actually increase productivity and increase your use of vertical space. I was like, oh, this seems like a good idea. Like, why don't we design a lighting system specifically for this? So that was kind of the original product. And then as we evolved, we're like, well, it would kind of make a lot more sense to just enclose that whole fixture in a self-contained environment. So we have very precise control over all of the factors of that are driving photosynthesis: temperature, humidity, CO2 concentration, and light. And then we'd have this kind of aeroponic base. So we had this fully enclosed cylindrical pod, we call them, that were approximately 4 feet in diameter by 6 feet tall, that were meant for large-scale commercial cultivation. But as we had conversations with customers, it was clear that we were asking our customers to change a lot about what they were doing. We're asking them to change the lighting, ask them to kind of ditch everything that they're doing and like take this new thing that hadn't been proven, which obviously didn't go very well. Right. Now, Tandem thought it was really cool. And that was, oops.
Unnamed company thought it, unnamed venture fund thought it was cool.
Who shall not?
The venture fund thought it was really cool.
Volta Fund thought it was
actually, they wanted us to do a consumer product. That was actually part of their deal. And we're sitting here looking at our financial model, like the numbers for enterprise sales dramatically outweigh consumer sales. But if this is a contingency of the deal, then we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. So that was the product at that time.
Okay.
So we had rounded up 1.2 million. Mm-hmm. At that point, the unnamed fund had committed to putting in an initial investment of $200,000, but would match up to $500,000, another investor. So we had secured a co-lead investor that was a strategic, that happened to be a large-scale commercial cannabis grower in Sonoma County. And we had set to close July of last year. And the week we were supposed to close, this co-lead called us and said that he got diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. And so you're like, oh my God. All right, like, of course, everything that can go wrong, like, could go wrong.
Right.
And so he's like, I still want to do the deal. I just need more time. And we're like, okay, how much time do you need? A couple weeks. A couple weeks go by. Next week. About 60 days go by before our lead VC pulls their term sheet, which was the beginning of September of last year, which was obviously devastating for us after putting in a year and a half worth of effort, thinking that we were going to close and actually be able to start doing some real work.
Yeah.
And so at that point, the co-lead was like, don't worry about it. I have these two angels that are going to take their spot. Like, let's set another closing date for about 2 weeks later. The day before we're supposed to close, one of our advisors who lives up in Sonoma County as well sends the day we're forced to close, I had checked in with the co-lead, and he's like, inspectors are on my property, can't talk. And we're sitting here like, fuck. Right? Not a good thing for any cannabis operation.
Yeah.
The next day, we had got no response from him. The next day, we get an article from our advisor that lives in Sonoma County about a farm that had gotten raided.
Oh, Jesus.
And it was this guy's farm. Come to find out from one of the key financial backers behind this property that this guy is apparently like a serial con artist and has now fled the country and is living in Italy.
Wow.
Like, you cannot make this shit up.
Wow. That's quite a cap table you also had there. Yeah.
Right.
So we've dodged a lot of bullets.
Yes.
Which, to give greater context to the story,
please.
Also maybe share what was happening with our third co-founder.
I realized I left that part out. So
keep in mind, this is all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
So we're going to rewind a little bit, and I apologize. So part of any startup founding company, when you have multiple co-founders, you want to have some sort of stock vesting agreement, right, to keep everybody incentivized. And kind of like what we've come to find out is like industry standard is about 4-year vesting period with a 1-year cliff.
That is industry standard. Yep.
So in our initial meeting with the three of us at my house, part of the conversation, like kind of going through and negotiating all these kind of like founder things, was this vesting cliff. Right. And the third co-founder was like, no, like I don't like the 1-year cliff. Like it should really be a 6-month cliff. And
which had we not been first-time founders, that would have been an immediate red flag and then been done. But we were like, well, we kind of need this guy. He's more senior. He's done some things and fills.
I'm sure he won't take off after 6 months.
Right. He's a great guy.
So he had left Fairchild Semiconductor, left or gotten fired, unclear.
Okay.
All we know is what he told us. In July of 2015, he took a job at another company the day after the 6-month cliff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And basically between then and when we ended up exiting him prior to the anticipated close of the round in July of 2015, he had basically done zero work. It was like not responding to emails and just telling us that he like basically wasn't going to work until we had raised money.
So complete douchebag.
Yeah. And so luckily, the one good thing that came out about that relationship with the venture capital fund is they helped us exit him. So everything happens for a reason.
Okay.
And exited with very little damage to us. So
Good.
it was very much a good, clean break. So come...
So I think we got to September 2016.
We're in September
where
of
things have fallen apart at this
we're
point.
in September of 2016. I had just come back.
JP just got back from Burning
My
Man.
first time at Burning Man. I think I slept for 4 days, and then I get this news that Tandem's pulling out, and like at that point, like my world is just like falling apart.
Right, yeah.
Like my reality,
It's like,
I'm just like I don't even know what's happening anymore.
My mom's basement is forever at this point. Yeah.
I was having an existential crisis.
Yeah.
We were both. I mean, at that point, we had been in it for a year and a half, like with no salaries. Like, I was living in my mom's basement. I had no money. Darwin was basically surviving off of his girlfriend, and.
Kind of still am. But
Thank you,
Yeah,
Lindsay.
yeah,
Really
yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
everything you've done for us.
Nice.
And we're like, what are we doing? Like, are we going to still do this? Like, are we not? And
You forgot to mention that you were one of the top Uber drivers in San Francisco during this
that's
time.
right.
Yeah,
I
nice.
forgot. I had been driving for Uber and actually met a number of investors. I have to say, for any startup founders that are in this area that are like at that kind of like still getting your shit together
Yep.
stage, driving for Uber is a great place to
you have to
randomly
drive a-
meet VCs.
You have to drive a black car, or does it not matter?
Nope, doesn't matter. I was
Okay.
in a white Subaru. It was totally fine.
Okay.
But where you would always go down to Palo Alto
No,
for your pickups,
no.
right? No?
No,
I feel
was-
like Uber that covers the Rosewood would be a great
Right.
route.
just sit in that parking lot all day
yeah,
long.
I'm here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was coming from Marin, so I would usually turn on right as I was crossing the bridge, and so I'd pick up folks from the marina and from Pac Heights, and
Yeah.
I actually met a guy that was like a hedge fund manager, and like quite a
Okay.
few other folks that ended up not going anywhere at the time. But yeah, good lead gen.
Got
So,
it.
so around that time, I had remembered meeting Ben. February of 2016 at a pitch competition because
Yep.
he was helping some companies pitch at Weed Club's at 420 pitch competition that was at the International Cannabis Business Conference last February of 2016. And Ben was super helpful in kind of shaping our pitch and really taking us from this really disjointed presentation to a presentation that was much more suitable for investors in just like a half-hour conversation. So we then found out that you guys had started Gateway and that the second cohort was starting in 2 weeks, and so called up you guys. We did the call. We did all the rigmarole and the dog and pony show and the IQ test or whatever the fuck that was that you had us do.
Secret
but
test.
I still don't even know what it was for.
There's a psychometric test.
Yeah.
so.
I'd love to see our scores.
I want to know
someday.
how crazy I appeared from that test
Yeah.
result.
I can show you. We're actually going to switch the test and probably ask everyone, just out of courtesy, to retake it so we have historical data on,
there you go.
on more accurate. We agree. I think we're
Before
going
and
to switch
after
to more
the
accurate.
cohort, that would be really interesting.
That
actually.
would- yeah.
So are you basically trying to establish some sort of like Myers-Briggs?
So my goal, this is
Personality
it's
traits
more
of
of a
what
it's more of
creates
like a personal project. We all kind of talk about founder psychology being important, but no one has really defined that very well. Like
Crazy
and been able to
is the word.
No, like too crazy is bad, but not crazy enough is bad. So like
Like starting churches? Crazy?
yeah, exactly. Right? So exactly that's a little bit. If there's poison Kool-Aid involved, that's not good. So yeah, so like that's just that's like a little pet project of mine, and what I'd like to do is in 10 years be able to look back at historical data and go, okay, let's pick out the people who did well, the people who failed, and let's see if we can see psychological trends here somehow that are measurable.
That's cool.
That I don't think Founder Institute does this a little bit, but they deal with people who are super early stage, and the people that go there are kind of a self-selecting group. So I don't think it's a good cross section of actual entrepreneurs. Not that cannabis entrepreneurs are a great cross section, but I'm going to use what I got.
You're going to get a wide range of spectra.
Yeah. Anyway, I remember you guys actually talking to us before the first cohort, but that was probably at a time when you were like, we've got this VC,
We've got
and
$2
everything's
million
going.
coming in.
Yeah. And
Way beyond you guys.
yeah, and I remember you at that pitch competition. So I remember when you called, kind of the second time. We already liked you guys, and we already knew what you were. We already liked your business, right? And we already knew that you needed pitch help. But we liked your business already. And I'm going to share this. I hope it's not like exposing too much dirty
We're
laundry. But
a full transparency.
I'm going to share
operation.
this because it's important for other founders to hear, I think. I remember saying to Ben before our call with you, I was like, look, all I need to know, I just want to see that he's like honest about what happened. Like, clearly they're distressed because if his like $2 million fundraising thing came in, he wouldn't be calling us right now. So like, I just want to see how honest this guy is and like self-aware. And a lot of founders at that point, a lot of people would have had that phone call with us and tried to bullshit about, well, we decided to do this and and then we changed direction and we're kind of interested, but we don't really need this. And like, people would have played bullshit, and you were just like, yeah, we fucked up this way, then this sucked, like then this fell apart, like we're kind of destitute. It's like, all right, like that's done, you're in. Like, yeah. So,
Which brings us to one of our core tenets of our company: radical transparency.
I honestly have a lot of respect for it. It's something that we love about you guys because, we don't. Office hours are never about you trying to bullshit us. It's always like, here's the good and the bad. Thankfully, mostly lately, it's been here's the good that's happening.
A lot of fires in the beginning.
But there's fires and so so that's important. So okay, so you got into Gateway. I don't know how much detail we should go into on your current status because we can't appear to be soliciting anything or whatever, but suffice to say, you raised a bridge round while you were in Gateway. You decided to focus on the aeroponic portion of this to solve the problem you were just talking about, which is like you're trying to ask them to replace everything, right? So we're going to focus on the one thing that we can.
Yeah. But this is actually an interesting thing for founders that are out there too. So we were capital constrained, and being capital constrained, we realize is actually a really good thing at an early stage because it really forces you to focus on what delivers the minimum viable product and the value proposition that you can achieve for your product. And that's why we ended up focusing on the aeroponic base because it delivered roughly 80% of the value proposition and about 20% of the cost. And the LED component is extremely expensive, and there's a million competitors in that space, and there was no one pushing into aeroponics. So.
And it's actually, and JP alluded to this, right? It's actually an easier sell, right? Because you're not saying we have better lights than you, and we have better this than you, and we have better that. You're saying like, look, we're just going to replace the base. It's more efficient in these ways. You can use your lighting that you're using now, right? You can use the nutrients that you're using now, right? All that stays the same. It's a much easier sell for new technology adoption, right? Maybe someday you will have a fully enclosed pod that does everything and you control everything, and I'm sure that's on the roadmap, but that's a much harder sell to someone who's making several $million every 3 months growing cannabis, right? Like, oh, just risk this whole crop to use my thing,
right?
That's a tough sell. So okay, so you came to you focused on the aeroponics. You raised a bridge round to kind of build those prototypes and get those out. There's prototypes now in people's hands.
This is
there's some prototypes
installation
there
that we just did in Colorado.
Yes, and there's JP if you can't see him with his same Occupy Mars shirt. So like any founder, he has one
of
two
my
shirts.
only shirts at this point.
Yes, and you've got a lot of pre-orders now, and you're doing a round now, which I think is, I will say, you don't have to say it, I'm pretty sure it'll be oversubscribed at this point. There's a lot of interest, and you're suddenly getting, like, things are now kind of, it's been proven, it's working, you've got, like, it's doing the things that you said it could do. It's not just a PowerPoint presentation anymore, and that's what makes it super, super compelling. But this isn't an overnight success. It took
2 years.
It's
And really,
it's
that's
a
what
2-year overnight success.
Yeah, that's actually pretty fast. Yeah.
And I feel like that's what they kind of like say. It kind of takes 2 years to really figure out that product market fit, which is really what we're basically on our third product iteration, more or less.
Yeah.
And yeah, so today we have 2 pilots deployed with pilots pending in Michigan, Massachusetts, Israel, Spain, hopefully Australia soon. We had a recent write-up in Fast Company that has got us a ton of like random inbounds from both clients and investors. Every client that we've talked to this week has asked us if they could invest, which is like insane.
Yep.
Whereas a year ago, we were begging people to.
Meeting.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. So we're at this point where we're ready to scale. We want to be ready for high volume manufacturing within the next 12 months because we're at this black swan legalization event as every state comes online, as we're seeing more so out of California, because California obviously has this entrenched industry that's kind of blossoming at its own rate with people that have been doing this a long time. But in states like Michigan, you have these net new people that are coming in with tons of money that are starting from a blank slate. And they're like, all right, am I going to go put soil in pots, or am I going to like use space technology to like grow my plants as efficiently as possible and make sure that as price compression happens, I'm going to be able to stay profitable because my costs are going to be lower than anyone else's and my production is going to be higher than everyone else's because of the fact that I'm using cutting edge technology.
Yep, absolutely. And you've seen interest from outside of cannabis as well, right?
Yep. We are hopefully starting a hops trial in July in Colorado, as well as hopefully a trial in berries with a very large berry producer, hopefully within the next 60 to 90 days.
Awesome. So okay, so that's your story. That's your
the
journey.
story.
I think we've covered it pretty well. Let's get into like your analysis of your journey a little bit more. What are some of the biggest mistakes you guys made? If you had to kind of rank your mistakes, if you could go back and do it again, when you do your next company, what are some huge mistakes you made early on?
Oh man. Ranking them I think would be difficult.
how much time do we have?
You don't have to rank this.
I can start regurgitating
Yeah,
them.
just randomly regurgitate whatever comes to mind as your big mistake.
Yeah, so first thing,
Co-founder selection.
co-founder selection, do not, and really hiring selection, don't hire resumes.
Don't hire resumes.
Right. So let's dig in on that a
Yeah.
little bit. What did you do for co-founder? Because it worked out with Darwin, but it didn't work out with this other co-founder. What did you do, and what would you do now for co-founder selection?
It seemed like it was almost like random at the time. Like these
It was
people
completely
fit these
random.
boxes.
I think, so if I had to start everything all over again, first of all, I would say before you go and stop working, make sure you have 2 years of liquidity to survive off of ramen and rent to last to this point, right? Like the only reason, like majorly that we were here is because of like my family and like Darwin's girlfriend. Like we would have had to go back to work, and like if we had gone back to work, we probably wouldn't be where we are. We'd be way less farther along.
Yep.
Aside from that, obviously, like if you're going into a net new relationship with anyone, right, there's unknowns, and so don't negotiate on your vesting cliff. Give yourself a year to like figure out the working relationship, and that way you can walk away within that year, with no damage done,
Right.
and really get to see the person working in their environment. And like that's kind of how we approach our hiring process as well, as contract to hire. Like again, resumes and 3 phone calls or even an in-person interview doesn't tell you how somebody works.
Right. So let me ask you this though. It took you. So he did have a 6-month. Let's talk about your co-founder that's gone. He had a 6-month cliff, right? But you didn't do anything during those 6 months. Like you could have at month 5.
We did.
Sat down and realized like we're booting you out because you've done nothing for 5 months. I don't anticipate that changing.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pick on you, but like you didn't do that. Why didn't you do that? And what will you do in the future so that doesn't happen again with employees?
Yeah.
So the evolution of JP into the JP you see today, and even the JP that you met at the beginning of Gateway, there was a lot of evolution that happened in that first year, and I think it happened due to the failures that we had, the mistake of not recognizing that Nick should be, that our third co-founder should be out sooner, and that.
Well, so much for all the editing.
We are
today.
really not good at this.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's
Sorry.
part of your core value of full transparency. So that's
right.
fine. Yeah, keep going.
Sorry.
No one knows the last name. It's fine.
There's been a ton of evolution for JP over that first year, and definitely over the second year too. And I think, at least what I've seen is that if you are an engineer and you've spent a lot of time engineering and you have a very high ability to be an engineer, you don't spend a lot of time in the world where people are trying to negotiate against you or screw you over, or in this sort of
Or
more
outright lie about what they'll be doing.
right,
Whatever.
in
Yeah.
this more external facing world, which I'm sure it happens also in engineering setting, but probably not as. It's like you're constantly being barraged if you're in sales, if you're in finance, and you're in that more externally facing role. So I think JP's growth over that period probably allowed him to become the person he is today, and that I would say is a one big thing that we didn't have in the beginning, but now, I mean, a lot of the stuff you read is if you can find the best CEOs of tech companies are former engineers that fall in love with the sales process and the marketing process, and that's, I think, what we're at peak JP for over the past 2 years.
So today, would you sit like what would your threshold be for? I mean, when would you know to jettison someone?
I mean, I think obviously it's a case by case basis, right?
Sure, I
But
guess.
I think the second that it's clear, I mean, the second that they miss a deadline or they very clearly manipulate the situation to their advantage and not the company's advantage, they're gone. We have way too much to be doing to have any dead weight, and to have people involved that are not aligned with the why and the how of what we're doing.
Cool. So you're colder now. You would.
I don't like to think of myself as colder.
In fact, he might even be warmer.
I think I'm
which
warmer
is-
than I was, but I am much less naive.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. So great. One mistake: co-founders / hiring. Give me another mistake you guys made.
Accepting
raising too early.
raising,
for sure.
yeah. So raising too early, like
So talk about that, because that's a weird one. People don't think like, oh, don't raise yet. Well, why is raising too early a problem?
shitty terms is the biggest one, right? I mean, the further along you are, the more appealing you're going to be to investors, and the more choice you're going to have.
And you
like,
don't get those predatory investors who are like, I get common stock
Right.
for advising.
I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, you can make a relationship analogy if you just, you know, settled for the one thing that would take you versus like the one thing that you wanted. I mean, your life's going to have very different trajectories.
Sure. Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Having validated external results, whether that being a unpaid pilot or someone using your product, that
Happy
says that-
customers.
yeah, having customers in some way, some shape or form, made the process a lot easier relative. You know, we're raising now, but I mean, as founders, you don't always have that. You don't always have that opportunity because it requires money, especially in hardware, to build something to even get it into someone's hands and validate.
I was going to bring that up because you guys are a hardware startup.
Right.
But I'm actually reminded of, you met them, a new team I'm not going to mention their names, that are in our new cohort.
Yeah.
And there's something similar about both of you guys. And that is, neither of you kind of let the fact that you're a hardware startup and theoretically need a lot of money to do something stop you from doing something, right? And I remember we were having conversations about like, oh, well, how much money do you need to build a prototype and blah, 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 blah. And I think it was like a Monday or whatever, like JP came in like dead tired, having not slept, which is I guess normal, but I mean not slept for several days. And he was like, I just went to Home Depot and like bought all the crap I needed to build my own pilot. And it's like janky and didn't look right and like was a mess, but you built a prototype.
But it worked.
And it worked. Right. And it was like,
And
okay.
it saved us a shitload of money.
Absolutely. And just that kind of resourcefulness was enough, I think, because then you could go have conversations with people that's like, I have a prototype, it is working, it's not just slides. Is it pretty? No, but it works. And the reason I was bringing up the other company is like they similarly went out and like literally like went and bought some shit and ripped it apart to get the parts out of it and 3D printed something around it and like made it work and like, yeah, look, it works. And it took them like a week, and it's not actually usable for real very much, but
But it will be.
it works and you can see it, and like that goes a long way for an investor,
Yeah.
or for a potential customer.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just want to make a point about your resourcefulness.
I would also add that, I mean, I'm an engineer by no trade. JP became our EE, our ME, and our our software engineer
Plant
for that,
scientist.
and their plant scientist,
scientist, yes.
for that first prototype. So that was definitely sort of, I guess, the extreme version of resourcefulness, where he just was teaching himself skills. And though it might sound cliche, he came from SpaceX. We're very inspired by Elon Musk, and the methodologies and the scrappiness of the companies that he's put together was very inspiring for us, and definitely very inspiring for JP, if I can speak for you.
Absolutely.
In the way that they can do, so much with so little in terms of capital resources.
Do you think founders need to be autodidacts to some extent?
That's a very trendy term right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I've never been trendy. That's awesome. Yes.
Mike Spector is like,
Carter and
All
Trendy.
right.
Carter is not.
Yeah. I'm using a trendy term. Is grit still trendy? Should I say that?
Yeah, gritty and autodidact.
Okay.
Autodidact is, I guess, I mean, they just have to be able to teach themselves the skills they need to build what they need to
The
build.
reason
to
I'm
get
asking
out
is
there.
you mentioned plant scientist, and I also remember a conversation with you where, for a while, we went out looking for PhDs in a bunch of fields related to plant science.
This is a good
and,
segue.
and what we learned was they didn't really have applicable skills and didn't really know as much as you would think. But there's this kind of aura to higher education, like, oh, they've got a PhD and blankety blanket. They must know all about how plants respond to light in this particular environment, or what droplet size, and blah blah blah. And actually, they didn't know really anything that was practically helpful. And you found yourself as a guy who basically just kind of started learning in the past several months, knowing more about the applied technology than the PhDs you were talking to. I don't know if that's true across the board. Maybe there's a couple that didn't.
I'm sure it's absolutely not true across the board. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I've been reading a couple white papers specifically about aeroponics, but like all of the studies are like, oh, we did this study like on burdock roots with 20 plants in a greenhouse, and like we noticed that the shoots grew faster. More study is needed. Like it's like 3 pages, and you're like, okay. So
yeah, there's nothing there.
We are very much pushing into a new realm and new knowledge about plants. And what's interesting is that roots are an organ, right, of the plant. And all of these studies about roots have been looking at them holistically. But roots themselves are comprised of many different types of cells, and each of those things is effectively its own little mini organ within the organ. And so we know almost nothing about how all those systems interact. And what's really exciting for us is the knowledge that's going to come out of the research that we're going to be able to do once we have the cash to do it, and how that's going to benefit all of us.
Yeah. Outside of cannabis even. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Any other, I'm looking at our time, like what's one more
Pitfall? What other fuck ups do we do?
one more big fuck up that you would like to share with
Maybe
the
I'll say
audience?
one thing that we did well.
Oh, you did something well.
Yeah, out of
Wow.
our own naivete. We did file patents and we did file trademarks early
Yep.
And with good attorneys.
with good attorneys. So
Kenobi Martins, if you guys are looking, anyone out there looking for IP attorneys, Kenobi Martins, they're amazing.
Awesome.
yeah, so that was one thing we did do well.
Good. And you think if you hadn't, you'd be hurting right now? I mean,
Well,
do
most-
investors ask a
So
lot
despite
about?
the fact that we have PCT applications filed, we still have utility applications to follow that up. But like every investor is like, do you have IP filed? Yes. Okay. Box checked.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And I guess we'd filed pre-legalization, so maybe it's not applicable to everyone, but there was this event that I guess occurred in our favor, which we couldn't have architected looking back, but we got lucky. So it might
Well,
not apply
timing.
in every situation.
Timing could be lucky, sure. But
Yeah.
timing does. There's some validity to say, like, timing matters.
Timing
Absolutely.
matters.
You can absolutely start a company that's an awesome company at the too early and doesn't go anywhere,
What
or
was
too
it?
late.
The giant Palm Pilot competitor.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm thinking through it, one more thing that we didn't do well
Okay.
was we were distributed. So once we got into the same city, our rate of productivity shot through the roof.
That's an interesting one because I feel like the old Luddite, because I always advocate for teams to be co-located when they're starting out. And I know there's people who seem to be able to pull it off, but they seem to be rare. That pull off distributed teams, they seem to be rare. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you guys were more productive together?
I mean, when you're disconnected, like unless you're sitting there like video chatting in real time the whole time, right? Like there's breaks, and when you have breaks, there's distractions, right? I was living at my mom's house, so like the second I'm not on a phone call, it's like, go mow the lawn, like,
Right, yeah.
go do this thing, like,
Yeah.
all these things. I'm like, I'm actually working. I know it doesn't look like I'm working, but I
Right.
am actually working. And so, the ability to be in the same place, meet every day, and be like, even if there's like not a lot to do, just sitting there and like shooting the shit about things that are relevant to what we're doing, and like having that creative synergy,
Right.
it doesn't happen in a distributed environment. And also, given the fact that we're doing hardware, I mean, when we were distributed, like, I was doing most of the build stuff by hand, and there was a ton of stuff where I was like, fuck, I need an extra pair of hands. And so I was having like friends come over and all these other things, and I'm like, God damn it, like, I wish my co-founders were here, right?
Right.
And so now, we're in the basement building together.
Yeah, no, I've seen the pictures of Darwin with hammers in his hand. And whatever else.
It's not pretty.
Yeah.
Gets the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. I know you have questions, Princessa. So, all right, let's let Princessa ask a question. I don't know if our mic is working, so just scream.
You'll know. I just wonder if you guys could speak towards how Gateway and your experience here actually enhanced what you were already doing and has gotten you this far.
Absolutely.
Oh wow, we should pay you for that question. a nice softball
So
ad
many
question.
entrepreneurs that want to get in, so it'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I don't know. Did you
Go
wanna
ahead.
start? Oh, yeah. So, when we started, we were at this point of desperation, and the impetus at that point was very much like, we don't really think we need this, but we need the cash, so we're going to do this. And
Very confident.
still a lot of confidence at that point.
Hey, you had $5,000 in your pocket once.
Right.
That was split 3 ways.
Oh, sorry.
I think it was actually split more.
Overstated.
It was split way more ways than that, actually. Now that I think about it. The Gateway experience has been amazing. Obviously, we're here 6 months later, way further on down the line. Both your and Ben's ability to help keep us focused, and like just the program, having the mentors come in every week was helpful. But what was more helpful was the time that we actually got to spend with you and Ben to actually focus on the fire of the day, right? Like, what do we need to be doing? Like, what milestones do we need to hit in order to get to this place to be where we're at today, which is with 2 active pilots and raising the round that we need to get there. I think probably the most valuable thing that came out of this, as far as like lessons, was really the pitch, right? I mean, like, being able to go from an idea and a deck that had the boxes but really didn't tell a cohesive story, and also still had lots of word vomit on pages.
Yep.
Founders follow the Guy Kawasaki model more or less. It's much better than just like data on slides. Being able to take that 45-minute pitch and have to distill it down to 3 minutes, I think is a good exercise for any founder.
Yeah.
Just to be able to really synthesize all of those key points. And you guys basically helped us write that whole thing after we really got that down there. That obviously was validated when we got flown to Canatech to pitch in Israel and won the pitch competition.
Yeah.
So I think that was like one of the biggest
And
things.
then got a client.
And then literally got it. Our client saw us there, flew us out to their facility the next week in Colorado, and signed the contract on the spot, just with a deck.
There you go.
A deck and a prototype of the software.
Right.
That's all we had to show, and obviously pictures of an actual pod. That's hacked together from freezers and off-the-shelf components.
Right.
Right? So,
Yeah. From Home Depot.
Yep.
There you go.
by the way, don't ever try and buy more than one freezer from Home Depot.
Why?
Because they're in 10 different places across
Oh.
the store. It took us 3 hours to buy 10 freezers.
Wow.
From one Home Depot.
You'd think you could call them up and be like, I'm buying 10 freezers, have them on the curb.
You would think.
That's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And then when we had to buy 20, and
How many Home Depots did you go to?
we originally ordered
Like 4.
16 for 4, and then we found the Home Depot in Newark actually had 16 at its one location.
Oh.
So then we rented a U-Haul and went down there and were able to get 16 out of Newark. But not all Home Depots are created equal.
Nice.
I've also found as well. So
Well,
I don't know if that helps any founders out there, but
Hey, it might. You never know. So, all right. So, what just to kind of draw this to a close, what's like one or two kind of key pieces, maybe one from each of you, like key piece of advice you would give someone who is at the very early stage of founding a company? Like, maybe they have the idea, they're maybe working on their idea deck kind of stage. What would you tell them?
I would say find people that you can ask questions to, because there's going to be a million questions you have every single day, and listen with the intent of learning, not with the intent of communicating back to them, but just listen with the intent of learning, because communication with people that have done it before, or people that have even never done it before but are just giving their honest feedback, that is an extremely helpful thing. And then I guess it evolved into our time here at Gateway, which was having the ability to communicate with you on a daily basis, or especially with office hours on a weekly basis, I personally found was invaluable.
That's our favorite part, honestly.
Yeah, just having the investors' support, whether it was awesome for just keeping us motivated too. So I'll have kind of two things along that line. The book that you guys gave us at the beginning of the course, the Mom Test.
Oh, awesome
I think
book.
that every founder should have.
I totally agree. Every founder should read that
Yeah,
book.
so it's basically a book.
Which JP referenced a lot. Too.
Yeah, no. In fact, PL, you have my copy of the Mom Test. Yeah.
So this book basically tells you how to ask questions to people about your product that are not like, "Hey, Mom, do you think that this would be a good idea? Would you use this?"
You're so pretty, honey. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and tells you how to reframe those questions in a way that's actually going to give you unbiased feedback that's helpful, and not just kind of tell you that. I'm not good with analogies, so I'm just not even going to try. That your idea is a good idea when it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But second to that, I would have to say that, if you're going to start a company and you're going to take the risk, make sure that it's something that you are 150% passionate about, and that it's something that you are willing to really give up anything for. And when you find that one thing, don't let anyone tell you that it's a bad idea, because if you stick with it long enough, I don't care what it is, you will make it happen. Every single person out there has the power to create and the power to manifest their own future, and I really encourage everyone to reach out and grab that.
Wow, those are some inspirational words that we should just end on. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us,
Thank you both
Carter.
for coming. Thanks, everyone, for watching. As always, you can see us next week at 10 a.m. on Facebook, and we're on YouTube, all the places, whatever, podcast. Thank you, Michael, for being behind the camera one more time.
Can I
at
plug
least.
our social media as well?
Oh, yes, I forgot.
Please
I'm supposed
follow
to do
us
that.
at GrowX
yes.
Inc.
How can they contact you personally if they have
You can email me directly at jp@growx.io, and then you can follow us on every social media platform at GrowX Inc.
At GrowX Inc.
INC.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to leave
No
you
worries.
out, but that's usually Ben's job.
Congratulations to Ben.
Yes, and one more time, congratulations to Ben.
Congrats, Ben.
If you're watching, Ben, you are in deep shit. So,
Probably literally.
actually, babies don't shit for the first day or something. Yeah.
He's got 24 hours.
So you got 24 hours
I don't
before
know.
you get. All right. Bye, everyone. See you next week.